Hey everybody, the Otherppl podcast is offered freely. Your support makes a difference. If you want to throw a few bucks in the hat, you can do that at patreon.com/otherpplpod. Every single episode of this show is available for free, offered to the world freely. Support the show at patreon.com/otherpplpod. Thank you.
You are not alone. You have found other people.
You and I have a friend in common.
Every stupid thing that a writer could do, I've done.
I think it's really beautiful.
Jeez, dude, what a struggle, you know?
It was incredible. You know, it was like your head exploded seeing what was really there.
And now here's your host, Brad Listi.
Just one person at just one time.
Hello, how's it going? Welcome to the Otherppl podcast. I am Brad Listi, and this is my program. It's good to have you with me. J. Ryan Stradal is back once again for a second time. He has a new novel out called The Lager Queen of Minnesota. It is available from Pam Dorman Books. That's an imprint of Viking, I believe. And J. Ryan is a buddy of mine. He lives here in L.A. His debut novel, Kitchens of the Great Midwest, was a big bestseller, one of those great debut stories. And The Lager Queen of Minnesota has been getting rave reviews. So quite an auspicious beginning to his publication career. He was nice enough to come over and talk with me, and that is coming up in just a moment. But before we get there, I do want to read some mail. I keep getting mail about the Bret Easton Ellis episode 587, so I'm going to share some of it with you. These I'm going to read you two letters back to back. Actually three, but they're from two people total. And they both share similar sentiments, which strikes me as interesting. So the first one comes from a listener named Tim. And he says, "Hey, Brad, as I listened to episode 589 with Steve Almond, I couldn't help but make the comparison to Bret Easton Ellis in episode 587. Both place high importance on the role of art in society, yet have wildly different views on how an artist should exist within that society. Whereas Almond thinks the artist should be careful to put things of value into the ether to have a positive impact, Easton Ellis thinks that the artist should only be true to himself with little to no regard as to how it impacts the larger society. I may be off base, but I think this relates to their general views regarding engaging in politics and the issues of the day. It seems that Easton Ellis is kind of like, I don't give a shit, I'm an artist. But Steve Almond counters with, I give a shit because I'm an artist. It's an interesting contrast of two writers who place high importance on art and the role it plays, but certainly don't agree on its application to society. Have a good one. Tim." So that's one email. And then I got another one from a listener named Dave. He says, "Good morning, Brad. Okay, so goddamn. I'm only 5 minutes into the interview with Bret Easton Ellis, and yes, I will listen to the entire interview because he is interesting, but ugh. Right out of the gates, he goes on and on and on. We are all an authority on something, sure, yet he comes off as an expert on everything he says, and more to the point, is disingenuous. And that's the tiresome part. Very. Also, telling people they're overreacting? Fuck that. He's an intelligent person, it seems, but he chooses to simplify, or oversimplify, shall we say, other people's feelings and, I don't know. Most everything is spoken like fact and is too dismissive of other facts and or opinions. Less than zero humility and chill. Have you ever heard an interview with David Lee Roth? He was recently on WTF. Ellis is like the flip side of the David Lee Roth coin. Yeah, that's it. I don't say that in a dry academic way, he just said. It would be much more bearable if he said mean instead of say, because fuck you, dude. My opinion." I don't know, this email's sort of, it's kind of a rant, as you can tell. Dave continues, "I hate guys who are so skilled with words and meaning, then are seemingly dismissive of words and meaning when convenient, and they apply that to others too. We'll see if I listen to the whole podcast. Love your podcast. Not this one. It is interesting, though." He's a political bullshit, utter bullshit, fuck 'em, podcast off. Signed, Dave. And then like a few minutes later, he emailed me again and he said, "Hello again, Brad. Oh, shit. Now I'm listening to Steve Allman episode, and it's great. A brilliant antidote to Brett." So thank you to Dave and Tim, and to everyone who has taken the time to listen, I don't know, recently in general, but in particular to the Bret Easton Ellis episode, because it generated so many letters, and I've tried to get to as many as I can here in the preamble. I picked these two because they both basically say the same thing, which is interesting, and I don't disagree in a general way that Almond and Bret Easton Ellis are coming at life and politics and art from two different vectors. And it occurred to me, since I recorded those interviews close together, you know, they happened in sequence relatively close to one another, that they are potentially great sparring partners. Like, I kind of want to see a debate between them on stage, because I feel like both can really talk. They're great talkers. They would have a lot to discuss. They have opinions. I think it would be pyrotechnical. So, not much more to say, but I wanted to share those letters because I think they highlight something interesting. Otherwise, what's going on? I saw Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, the new Tarantino movie. It felt good to be in a theater. I haven't been to a theater in way too long. I don't get to go to the movies as much as I would like. And I liked the movie. I didn't love it. Who knows why? I felt like it was super hyped. I was ready for it to be this like raving masterpiece, but you know, I don't want to spoil it. I'm not going to say anything too much more. Just personally, I enjoyed it. It was fine. But it wasn't like, oh my God. And I think there are other Tarantino movies that I prefer. I think I've seen most all of them. I haven't seen all of them. I don't think I haven't been able to get through The Hateful Eight and like one or two others. But I like Inglourious Bastards. I think that's my favorite one. And the better alternate history. I think it's a superior alternate history to Once Upon a Time, just from my perspective. So otherwise, just working and podcasting and trying to be a family man here in Southern California. So anyway, let's get to J. Ryan Stradal. His new novel is called The Lager Queen of Minnesota. The Lager Queen of Minnesota. And it is available now from Pam Dorman Books. Such a good time talking with him, and very happy for my buddy, J. Ryan Stradal. Here he is. Are you ready? Should we do this? Okay.
I didn't even think initially that I would send my first book, its manuscript, to like big agents or big publishers. I didn't even consider it as an option.
Kitchens of the Great Midwest.
Yeah.
You thought it wasn't ready for prime time, or you didn't?
It wasn't that I didn't think it was ready for prime time. It was like I didn't even consider it. It was like literary success is something that happens to other people. Like I looked at the world and I went, I don't see how I can get from here to there, and with what I know and the people, Yeah, I mean, at one point I had 4 years between publishing short stories. I mean, I was assiduously writing short stories between like 2003 and 2013, which is when I started writing Kitchens and kind of tapered away from writing short stories. And during that time, I met a lot of other authors who were having, what I consider to be literary success by having their books come out in small presses and doing small tours and reading series in the cities they lived in. And I thought, that looks great. That's what I want. That seems feasible for me. I can reach that. But then I'd go to Vroman's or Skylight and I'd see some touring author, someone like George Saunders. And I go, I don't know how you get there from where I'm at. No idea. So it feels very surreal to me. There are times I wake up and I kind of pinch myself and I go, how I get in this situation.
Well, how did you? So you write Kitchens of the Great Midwest, and at some point you decide you want representation.
Yeah. And
at some point things do turn, and you do go.
You were a huge help.
I know.
Yeah, I don't want to.
I made J. Ryan Stradal.
Seriously, and I don't want to put too much pressure on you vis-a-vis your listeners now, writing you asking for help getting agents, but you were a huge help in that regard, and you told me something I've told a million people ever since, which is follow the enthusiasm.
Right?
Yeah.
I've said that on this show before, and that is I think that's really the only full-throated, if that's the way to put it, piece of advice that I feel confident about giving.
Yeah, because there's a lot of literary advice out there.
Yeah, and it applies to agents or publishers. Right.
And when it applies to writers, it's so provisional. Like, if you're the sort of writer that needs to outline. If you don't need to outline, don't outline. Garth Greenwell had a Twitter, I don't know what you'd call it, like a thread last week where he put out a lot of writing advice that sort of seemed to illustrate this, that if it's, whatever works for you is what works. The writing advice that you take is the advice you need, in a sense. Or the advice that you apply successfully is what you needed. Because there's a million ways to get around to writing a novel. But in terms of getting it to publishers, especially the publisher that I currently have and have had, I needed an agent. Which is Viking, Pamela Dorman Books at Viking. I've had the same editor for each book, and I'll have her again for my third book. And I couldn't have gotten to her without Ryan Harbage, who you told me about. He also represented a friend of mine, Rob Roberge, still represents Rob. And I had a way of getting to him. I could contact him. And he took a long time to get back to me. He's very busy. He has a lot of clients. He only has one other person working with him. But in the meantime, I went on Publishers Marketplace, registered for it, paid the money, looked up agents that were making recent sales, agents that were looking for new clients. I Google searched agents looking for clients, saw a lot of the junior agents or younger agents at the larger agencies, sent them the manuscript, not expecting a thing. 10 years before, I'd written a manuscript. I'd written a novel in the mid-2000s. I sent it to agents. I didn't even get a response. A few agents might have emailed back to say, oh, we received it. But that was the extent of it. No one asked for a full. No one said, great work, but it's not for me. Nothing.
Right.
And so I just thought, oh, that's the default. That's what I should expect. I'd forgotten to take into consideration that I'd spent the intervening 10 years writing and reading more than I ever had in my life before, or probably since, and became a better writer just through reading a shit ton of books and writing all the time, short stories. So by the time I got around to writing Kitchens, I'm sure I was a better writer, but I still held the notions of an inferior writer. I still held the notions of a writer that had been disappointed and had been turned away at the gate earlier in his life. And I didn't expect anything and didn't even really consider it as an option. I thought, oh, okay, well, I'll try to get an agent. And if this agent can, get me a deal at an indie press, that'll be great. And I think that was one of the first things I asked Ryan was oh, yeah, let's talk about, he showed me the list of editors and publishers he was going to send it to. And I thought, wait a second, where are the indie presses on this list? Because I thought none of these people are going to say yes. They're not even going to respond to you, Ryan. Let's just skip this part that isn't going to happen and get to the part that I know, because I also knew people that worked at indie presses. I love indie presses. A lot of my best friends in LA who are novelists started or are still publishing on indie presses, and I love them. To me, it seemed that's what I set out to do.
And that's where the cool bands have their records. There's some cachet on the street with the indie press.
Right, it's so accessible, and often on a sentence level, the writing is so interesting, and they're doing more interesting things with structure and plot, and they're fun, intelligent, engaging reads. And Ryan said, "Well, yeah, we can get to that if it comes to it, but let's let's send to these publishers and these editors at these publishers. And he explained to me, this was before I even signed with him, he explained to me, this is why we're sending this manuscript to these publishers. He was extremely transparent about that.
But I mean, meaning what? He described like, this is who they are, this is who this editor is, this is who this editor has published.
Yes.
This is why I think it's a potential fit.
Yes.
All that stuff.
Yes.
And the other thing I would say, too, just for people listening, is that, you know, an agent's not going to make much money, if any money, on an indie press. So they have they have a business interest in trying to get a bigger house to put down, some money on it. But just as a business strategy, typically an agent that's submitting to the houses in New York is going to start with an A-list. Mm-hmm. You might as well swing for the fences. These are the people we'd love to be with. Right. And then if that doesn't work, you hopefully get like a second round of submission. Yeah. If that doesn't work, sometimes an agent will bail and say, I think you should write another book, which is like, it's quite a thing to tell somebody who just spent like 4 years pushing a rock up a hill. Yeah, but it is. It often happens, which just to draw a line under it, adds credence to this notion that when you're looking for an agent or you're looking for a publisher, follow the enthusiasm, because an agent who is truly enthusiastic about a writer and his or her work is most likely to endure rejections and be willing to do multiple rounds of submission if they have that enthusiasm and that belief. And if they do not, and they only see it as like a more transactional relationship, well, I'll see if I can sell it. Right. And if I can't, in short order, then I'm going to be on to the next. I think that happens sometimes when that love isn't there. That's why enthusiasm is so important, or one of the reasons why. Yeah,
and it's one of the reasons I chose my editor as well, was because of her enthusiasm. And I've been so happy working with Pam Dorman. She's been such a good fit for my writing. With Lager Queen, it was harder. I mean, I didn't have a finished manuscript that had been copy edited by 3 different people, which Kitchens had been by the time I got to Pam's desk. I dragged her through my process a lot more. Like, she saw like a turgid early draft that was over 570 pages long, had 18 chapters, 9 point of view characters.
I think I remember talking, maybe the last time you were on the show, or one of the times we hung out.
I think it was one of the times we hung out.
Was around that time. Yeah. And you were like 600 pages. Yeah. I think it's going to need work.
Oh, it needed a lot of work.
But now you and Pam, now she really knows you, right?
Yeah, yeah. We've been through the desert and back together.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And can you talk about, I guess, like, because Kitchens, just so people know, did extraordinarily well for a debut in the literary fiction space. Yeah. It sold in the six figures numbers of copies.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that's not normal.
No.
Most books sell like 500 copies.
Yeah. My agent says 90% of all books sell under 5,000 copies.
Yeah, and I think a lot of them sell, like, you read different things on the internet.
It also made the New York Times bestseller list, which, for fiction, 95% of the people on the bestseller list have been on it already. It's a very hard thing to get onto, and I had no idea about any of that.
How did you get on it? What do you think happened?
They really pushed the book. The publisher, Viking, got behind Kitchens in a really unusual way. At the time, I don't think they do this anymore, but there was an internal program called Tidal Wave. And the previous Tidal Wave books before mine had been Girl on a Train and Station 11. Oh. Where, as a company, Viking kind of circled wagons. And I don't know if this was just a Viking thing or a Penguin Random House thing, actually. My sales rep told me about it. But what it meant was, internally, this book would get a lot of juice. They would put a lot of money behind it. They would make sure it got into a lot of places. They would pay to have it in airports, because that's a thing, They would ads. They did a full page ad in New Yorker. They did ads in newspapers. It really got publicized.
Tidal Wave.
Yeah, and I don't think they do that program anymore.
Why not? That sounds like a good idea.
Yeah, I don't know. It's sort of like playing favorites, though. You're kind of marshaling a lot of resources towards one title when, you could be spreading the wealth a bit more, I guess.
Well, I mean, it doesn't have to be one title, but it is a business. And if you feel like there are certain books that you have on your list that have, if in your estimation, have the best possible chance of really connecting, I don't see what's wrong with.
And the book was really beloved internally at Penguin, and I really felt that. I really felt that they would give it a shot, which is the most you can ask for as a writer. When
you put the book out we might have talked about this in our last conversation, so there may be some overlap, but I think it's worth asking again. When you took the book to market, or Ryan took the book to market, you submitted to that first top tier list of editors. Pamela Dorman, I'm assuming, was in that grouping.
Yes.
You had multiple offers?
Yes.
Book went to auction?
No, Pamela preempted it.
Okay, but you decided to go with her based on the conversation I'm assuming you had with her, and the connection you forged, and the sense of, she really gets my book.
Yeah, I had a conversation with her in the parking lot of Original Productions in Burbank while I was working on Storage Wars, Texas, during my lunch break.
Really?
Yeah.
She came out here?
No. I was talking to her on the phone.
Oh.
I went out to the parking lot.
She's like, I'm going to track you down at your place of business. That's a good sign. When your editor...
That's enthusiasm. That's my new measure for enthusiasm.
I want my editor
Find
to
me where I work.
Stalk me.
Yeah.
I want you in a tree.
I want you to send me Harry's berries.
Yeah, right. I want you... I want to see you outside my front door. But so you feel this personal level of connection, and this is the right way to go, and then you feel this organizational rallying around the book that is a good sign.
Yeah.
They spend a lot of money on promotion. I'm imagining too that when a big publisher like that, with all of its human resources, when they do something like this, it had to have involved their sales reps and the lines of communication with bookstores. So then bookstores were probably aware of it in a way that they might not be aware of the average mid-list title or whatever.
Yeah, the sales reps, I don't know how many of your listeners know this side of the industry, but what the sales reps do, or one of the things they do, is go to the bookstores one night a quarter, about every 2 or 3 months, and pitch their favorite books from their list to these bookstores. And usually they'll gather at one bookstore or another place where a number of booksellers will be gathered, and they kind of pitch a bunch of booksellers, or pitch book clubs that meet at a bookstore as well. I've seen different versions of this over the years where, here's an event, like there will be a Independent Bookseller Association meeting, which are regional, and there the sales reps will pitch books to booksellers at kind of symposiums or conferences kind of things. And then they'll go to bookstores and they'll pitch them to book clubs and, other, maybe regional indie bookstores, I guess. But that was a big part of it. It was I know my sales reps. I love them. They were really behind my first book. They were early adapters. They got it to booksellers. Booksellers were tweeting about my book in January, and the book came out in July.
That's a good sign.
Yeah.
And also, by the way, most writers don't know their sales reps.
Right.
I don't think.
Right.
Did you get introduced?
Yeah.
So it was okay, so they really put organizational muscle behind.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll casually hang out with my sales rep.
That's a good thing too.
Yeah. We'll go to a bar and watch baseball together.
Really?
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, and he'll give me galleys he thinks I would like. It's we have a friendship. And he also kind of goes the extra mile for me in terms of promoting my work within our region. He had a party for me at a brewery in Monrovia where the brewer made a beer based on a beer in my book.
No shit.
Yeah.
Great.
And they invited a bunch of local librarians and booksellers to this party where I talked about the book. They talked about the book. Everyone got a copy. People got copies signed. And so this kind of thing happens to help move books up a stack, because you told me earlier today, you get 3 or 4 books a day. Booksellers, librarians get several times that. They need to be told what to prioritize. They see this mass of books. Some of these names they know, most they don't. So if they have a sales rep coming saying, move this book up the stack, read this book, this kind of reader is going to like this kind of book. They'll know what to do with it. They need this information.
So, okay, so you have this great success. with Kitchens of the Great Midwest, which, by the way, great title.
Oh, thanks.
It really, though. And I think it has something to do with why it succeeded. You know, you don't want to put too much emphasis on one particular little tiny thing, but it matters to people. Like, it says something. I feel like it says something about what's in the book, obviously. It also speaks to a market that is large, people like cooking and food, and then it also places the book regionally.
Yeah.
And somehow I think communicates that this is a book that's for everyone and is not like a book for like a specific artsy, like niche, like, you know, I live in the Bowery, like write poetry and blood. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like there's an accessibility maybe there.
Sure. There's kind of an everyman aspect to it as well, I think.
Yeah. And so
that was important to me. I mean, I wanted people to get the notion that this book is, you know, middle class, working class book too. You know, this is not a book about rich people problems.
Right.
You know, there's something about that title that to me connoted, oh, this is a book about everyday people and their problems.
And it characterizes the Midwest as great, which I think, you know, there's the common trope that the coastal elites look down their nose at the flyover states or whatever, you know, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And as two Midwestern boys, I don't know if I grew up with any chip on my shoulder about that. I was so clueless.
I didn't grow up with a chip on my shoulder about it either. I thought where I grew up was great. I did see, and I have perceived my whole life, as I'm sure you have, how entertainment created about people in the Midwest by people on the coast tends to be kind, oversimplify us, oversimplify the sort of people we grew up with. And you certainly see that in a lot of contemporary journalism, some of the lazier journalism attempting to, I talk about like Trump voters in the Midwest or something and trying to cast people with a broad brush by going up to the craziest person in the local diner and saying like, well, this is what Indiana's like, you know.
By the way, I grew up in Indiana.
Yeah.
That is what Indiana's like.
Well, you can say that as someone from Indiana. Yeah. I like to think that, well, I know that Midwesterners like myself, like the people I grew up with, the people I love, we contain multitudes. We're just less likely to share that early. You got to work it out of us. You got to earn it.
Especially you Minnesotans.
Yeah, you really have to earn our vulnerability. Like, this is not something we're going to lead with. We're not going to lead with our vulnerability, and we're not going to lead with our props either. We don't like to toot our own horn, like, generally.
I've been with my wife for what, 15 years? I'm still trying to earn her vulnerability as a Scandinavian Minnesotan.
Yeah,
it's like it's people. They hold a lot internally.
I know. That's why I love writing about them. I love writing about Midwesterners who get put in situations where they have to reveal or reckon with their vulnerability.
Yeah. Why am I such a? I feel like I'm more of an open book. Maybe it's like I do. Though.
Maybe that's why you had to get out.
I had to get out.
Like, I couldn't survive here.
I had to find a garage and some microphones and just start vomiting into the world. But I think it's like maybe I don't know. I come from a voluble family.
I was worried for a really long time that I was too earnest for California. You know, especially Los Angeles. I thought I'm just too sincere.
I think in some ways, I've noticed that about myself, like in terms of like a cultural fit. Mm-hmm. I often couch it in maybe I put it inside of a frame that it might not be the right fit, but there's something like very competitive and ambitious about a certain kind of person who comes to Los Angeles specifically to make it in the entertainment business. Right. That I have always felt like a sense of alienation around. Like,
I know exactly what you mean.
But I don't know. That might just be my own stuff. I don't want to put too much on that. I don't know. I go back and forth. Sometimes I feel like there's a credence to it, and it's like, wow, I feel like ambition and competition can be okay. But it depends what you're ambitious for.
Yes.
And what you're competing for.
Yeah, you're right.
And how, how it's countenanced.
Right.
And I think fame and big money as pursuits can engender a lot of internal toxicity that then finds its way outward. It's toxic. It can be a toxic environment.
Right.
Do you feel that?
Yeah.
I mean, you worked in entertainment for a while.
Yeah.
So you've been around it, you know, and like there's a weird hunger. Mm-hmm. And who was I talking to about
people
this?
always have a hustle or an angle too.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's that. It isn't that people aren't sincere. I mean, often they are, but their ambition is going to make their their relationship with you mutable sometimes. You know, you sometimes feel like, oh, I'm in this working relationship with this person because I'm of use to them for this period of time. And then they move on, or you move on.
Right.
Yeah. And for a certain period of time, you might have a really intimate friendship with them. You know, like, well, I shared things with them I don't share with my oldest friends. And then like 3 months later, you don't see them, and then you never see them again.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's, you know, it's odd. I think you have to have your head on straight.
Yeah.
To navigate it. And I think you have to really, really love it.
Well, one of the things that I was told early on, and it's a little bit of a cliche, but I found it to be true, is you have to have 2 of 3 things to make in the entertainment industry. You have to have, you know, family connections or some kind of nepotism. You have to be good at the job, and you have to be well-liked and easy to work with. You have to have 2 of those 3 things. You can't have just one.
No wonder I didn't get there. I mean,
you're hated, you have no family, and you're not good at anything.
I mean, I sold a TV show. I can tick that box. But I mean, man, that that process was draining.
I know, and I have so many friends who are pitching TV shows now or have pitched them recently, often their first one, and it just seems exhausting.
Well, and you talk about like people like being disposable, essentially. You know, you're of use to somebody.
Oh, yeah.
But there's a superficiality in extreme.
Oh, certainly. And in that industry, you're nobody till somebody loves you.
Right.
Like, it's so hard to get that first sale. And then once you've got it, or maybe I've had a lot of people also tell me, the first sale, no, you basically get that show taken away from you, and you're powerless. Like you maybe get a consulting producer credit or something, or co-exec, or something. You're like you're that most of the time that's not going to be your breakout. It's going to be your second show.
Right.
And now that you've got some leverage, now that you've pried open the door with a halfway decent idea that someone stole from you, right, now you can move on and really put your name on something.
That's about right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's about right. It was like, there's all this like weird superficial love when you're taking all these like endless meetings. Mm-hmm. You got a meeting, you got to do this meeting. And people are like, I love you. I love your voice. They send you emails in all caps, which is like the joke I always make, but it's rooted in truth.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many like, I love all caps your voice. And then you just never hear it from him again. You're just like, what the fuck was that?
He just loves your voice.
Yeah, right. He doesn't love me. Just my voice. Story of my life.
Yeah. He's got your podcast.
Yeah, right. So anyway, back to you and moving from the success of Kitchens, where you sold in how many markets? What are you laughing at?
12 or 13.
Why did you just laugh?
Oh, I was just thinking, you said, like, let's get back to you. And it reminded me of a song I wrote with my friend Dan Safarak in college called But Enough About You. Just hadn't thought enough.
That's like a feature of every single episode of the Other People.
But Enough About You.
Yeah. Let me try to wedge some of my own personal neuroses into this conversation.
Oh, no, I really appreciate that part. But anyway, what was your question again?
It was about moving from success of Kitchens. Not only did it do well in the North American market, did it sell overseas?
Okay. Yeah, my British publisher didn't want Lager Queen, partially because they didn't think Kitchens sold enough in the UK, and they thought Lager Queen was even more specifically regional.
Right.
I mean, maybe if Lager Queen is a hit or enough of a hit that they think, oh, boy, UK readers want to read it, they'll think about it. Certain markets like the French didn't pick it up until pretty late. Until I think it was out in paperback before the French were like, all right, yeah, we're interested. We'll do a French edition. Then it got nominated for an award this year.
In France?
Edition, yeah.
No shit?
Yeah, some kind of reader's award. Yeah, and I was like, wow, okay. So I don't completely understand the alchemy of that, but Lager Queen hasn't sold as much overseas yet. That's one thing Kitchens had that also propelled that momentum was a lot of overseas interest early, whereas this book has been, the second book, Lager Queen, has been slower to develop overseas. The Germans, they bought it, but
they did.
They went right for it.
What about Scandinavia? What about the Scandinavian market?
Same German language publisher as before, and they're actually out of Switzerland. They're not out of Germany, but German language, and they're wonderful. I love them. I'm really glad that they picked up my second book. But yeah, no, it's been pretty sparse other than that. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. Yeah, it's all a blessing. This is a fun thing to think about, a fun problem to have.
Sure, yeah. And with the success of Kitchens and having some precedent, and having gone through the tidal wave experience with Kitchens, when you sell your second book, or was it a 2-book deal?
No. I sold the second book discreetly, which was to my advantage.
Yeah.
I sold it based on, I think, 2 chapters I'd written by that point. Only one of which ended up making the final book, and only a part of that chapter. I wish I knew the pages off the top of my head, but it's deep in the book. I always start in the middle, anyway. So, but yeah, I sold it on a partial, and I sold it for more than Kitchens because at the time I think they thought, "Oh, Kitchens is going to be really big," and I was able to leverage that to some extent.
Sure,
but
so when you say leverage, because this is the question that I'm getting at is, having gone through the tidal wave experience, were you able to say, and can you do that again?
No, I don't think it's not something I would ask for. I just, to me, it felt like such an honor and so unheard of, like I would never ask for it in a million years. I just felt like that would be so rude and
I think I would be
not constant
give me the wave again. I want the wave again.
I know. But they've done great. They've done great with Lager Queen.
Well, and I think having seen the success of Kitchens, and this book also has a what's the word? Like a food. What do you call it?
Yeah, I guess so. Food, beverage, hospitality.
Food and beverage. Yeah, it's got to say it's
front of house angle.
Well, but it's like the point is that it's not a complete departure, or like now
right.
Jay Ryan has
the
written,
apple's close to the tree.
Yeah, so you're building.
It's getting better reviews than Kitchens got.
Really?
Yeah.
Well,
I'm really pleased by that because it's such a strange book. It's in such a specific world. I looked around and I could only find one other recent novel anyway about the beer industry or set in the beer industry. And it happened to be a female brewer in Minnesota. It was a romance novel, but it was so funny. It was
what was it called?
I forget off the top of my head, but it came out pretty recently, within the last 2 years.
Love and Hops.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, something like that. And it was. I certainly don't mean to impugn it. I haven't read it, and I know how difficult it is to write a book, and the research that this writer must have done in the brewing industry and had reasons for sitting in Minnesota. I'd like to read the book, quite honest with you. But that was it. I thought, oh wow, there's only one other book, and it happens to be, at least in terms of its content, very closely related in a sense. But I didn't even know about that book until I think I was in my final draft of writing Lager Queen. At the time I started writing Lager Queen, it was so long ago, it was March of 2015. The beer industry had been expanding by leaps and bounds every year, and I was touring for Kitchens and always ending up in these small Midwestern towns where often the best environment, the most people, the best food in some cases was at the local brewery. And I thought, I want to write about this. This is cool. This is a cool, vital, new, young thing happening in the Midwest, and I want to write about this. But I also want to write about the crappy beer I drank growing up in Minnesota.
Right.
Oh my God, we had so much mediocre lager. And the year I was born, I mean, there were fewer breweries in the entire United States than there is in Minnesota right now.
Really?
And
yeah, it's exploded.
But Minnesota had a lot of them. Out of the 110 or 120 breweries that existed in the whole U.S., Minnesota had a nice chunk of them. And a lot of them, like Schmidt, Grain Belt, Shells, a lot of them just made lager, made pretty much the same thing.
Right.
Hams, you know.
Well, but I mean, all those cold, like, because I grew up partially in Milwaukee, and
Milwaukee, Wisconsin had a ton of them. Absolutely,
but they're freezing their ass off. They're inside.
Yeah,
but like, here's the thing: living in California, you know what I hear all the time?
What?
I can't drink beer. Beer bloats me.
Oh,
I get bloated.
Oh, funny.
I think I've said that. I feel weird about that now because beer is a more like beverage of the people drink.
Sure,
but out here it's like wine. You know.
Yeah. Well,
bugs the shit out of me, Conrad, hearing people talk about wine. I got to be honest, especially younger people. Like when some I don't know. It's fine. This is more of my own stuff. But when people are like, "Oh, the bouquet on this Pinot," it's like, shut the fuck up. Like, you got that at Trader Joe's.
Yeah,
you don't know anything.
Down.
You don't know anything you're talking about.
Yeah.
Just drink your wine.
Yeah, calm down.
But beer, like regionally, is way more. I guess it's changing, though. Wine is popular in the Midwest, too. I feel like people...
Oh, big time.
Yeah, so it's not like it's completely exclusive, but I feel like when I go back to visit family in the Midwest and in Chicago and stuff, like, beer is king.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, people are not ordering rosé at the bars near Wrigley Field most of the time.
Yeah, not terribly often.
You know, so you...
Yeah, there are more women beer drinkers in the Midwest, I think, than out here, at least that I experienced.
And sometimes people have a certain sense of identity around their alcoholic beverage of choice. Like,
sure.
I'm a beer drinker.
Yeah.
I don't drink that wine, or I drink wine because I'm too sophisticated for beer because it bloats me.
Right.
It's too carby.
Right.
And then it's like, no, I drink tequila because wine is grain-based.
Right.
All that
drink
shit.
Vodka because it's low in calories.
It just gets
I only drink Wormwood.
Isn't it amazing? Isn't it amazing how you can make anything annoying?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You can just
especially with food.
Yeah, food and wine. So, but you seem to have. I think you have a very well-adjusted attitude about this stuff because you genuinely love it.
Oh yeah.
Like, you love wine, you love food, you love beer. Right?
Yeah.
You like it all.
Oh, yeah.
And you love to learn about it all.
Oh, absolutely. That's my favorite part.
Okay. So I think people need to know this. It's probably somewhat obvious based on the subject matter of your fiction. But like in real life, like you're out tasting wines. Do you collect wine?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't have a huge collection, but I have what I want.
Do you read about it?
Sure.
Like you get like Wine Spectator and stuff like that?
I don't get it, but I'll read it, you know, I'll pick it up, you know, when I'm traveling or something like that. Yeah, I'll read stuff like that, or I'll read articles online. Yeah. I mean, if I'm interested in a particular kind of wine, or I'm interested in a particular topic within the wine world, like I'll look it up and I'll read about it. I'm always looking for a good value, I'll put it that way. I'm always looking for the best wine I can get under $30. And, you know, because I don't want to, you know, fall into some sort of trap where, you know, I'm spending too much on wine because I've convinced myself that, you know, wine above a certain price point is quality wine. Everything else is direct, because it's not true at all.
No, you can get great wine under $30.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And I'm constantly on a hunt for it. I'm always looking to both, you know, challenge my palate, expose myself to new things, and find good, inexpensive wine. And it's not that hard, but it takes more work. And
what are some hot picks? Do you have any bottles off the top of your head you can recommend to people?
Oh boy, individual bottles?
Like something people could actually get, you know, like at their...
Oh boy. There's a bottle of Monastrell put up by a Spanish vintner called Untitled. You probably have seen other of their wines. They have a black label with a person's face on it. These wines are under $10, but their Monastrell is particularly good. And here you can get it for $6 or $7, but I've seen it in other places for $19.
Wow.
Yeah.
What's it called again?
Honorovera. I don't know how to pronounce it exactly.
Honorovera, okay.
But it was 2 words. Yeah, that Monastrell is great. I got a friend.
Monastrell's
you know
varietal?
Josh Shank. He was buying it by the case for his parties.
Was he?
Yeah.
Oh, well, it's smart.
Yeah. We got into this wine.
Okay, but the Monastrell, that's the varietal?
Yeah, it's the same as Mourvedre, basically. It's a Southern Rhone origin varietal. It's used in Southern Rhone blends like Chateauneuf-du-Pape is probably the most famous one.
Oh, okay.
And so, like, that's another example. You look at Chateauneuf-du-Pape, that is such a high price, and it has such a restaurant markup that's just completely insane. But you can look at the regions around it. Like, there's a region right across the river from it that makes basically the same terroir, fraction of the price, like half the price, So I'm always looking at stuff like that.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it's a red wine. Oh,
yeah, that's a red one. Yeah, Monastrellis, yeah, it's red. There's a lot of the characteristics of a grape that's, from the Southern Road. I feel like I'm being one of these annoying people you were just talking about.
No, but
I really love it. I actually got turned on to them by California vintners that were making Rhone style blends. Like Beckman was an early favorite of mine, and they've gotten pretty expensive now, but they still make good stuff even as their the climate in their wine growing region gets hotter. It's affecting their growing season. I'm still really happy with their wine, but they, through getting exposed to those grapes, I'll ask them a lot of questions every time I go up there, and I found things I really loved in, both Southern French and then now Spanish wine, which probably still represents the best value in red wine. Like, Spanish wine is a great value, Spanish reds. And for Italian wine, I'd say Montepulciano. Like, you could go to a restaurant, if they have a Montepulciano, that's probably going to be the best bang for your buck.
Yeah.
Why? You can get a good Montepulciano for $10 or $80. And for other grapes, you get what you pay for a little bit more. Where a Montepulciano, for whatever reason, just kind of, it's,
It delivers.
Yeah.
I don't know. Italian wine's harder for me.
It is harder. It's different. Every wine region and country has very different attitudes about wine and different histories of those wines in those areas. But
this is the thing: is that for as much as I kind of eye roll sometimes about the pretentiousness of it, and I don't know, maybe it's specific to L.A. I've just been to too many parties where people are standing around with their wine, talking about wine, in a way that feels phony to me. But
you can get such good wine for not a lot of money, and at the end of the day, I've been to a few of these paper bag parties. People don't know what they're drinking. Most people.
No.
I mean, there's a few people.
Paper bag parties where you basically blind taste.
Yes.
And everybody decides what their favorite is.
Yes.
And a lot of the times it's like the $12 bottle.
Right.
And the $75 bottle, everyone's like, ew.
Yeah, right.
No one knows.
Right, yeah.
But the thing that I want to say in defense of wine, and this is how I feel about it when I'm at my least contentious, is that the growing of the grape, like the way that wine is made and the care that goes into it and the history, that connectivity to the land, the way in which it's tied to the seasons and the particular weather patterns of that year, all of that stuff to me is really fucking cool.
Yeah.
Like, I actually have a sense of romance and total respect for that, and it's great to drink a wine that's really good and to think about all that stuff.
A lot of that is true for beer now too.
Yeah.
With the craft breweries in the Midwest where, you can literally drive an hour and see the grain that is being used in this beer.
Right.
Yeah.
Does it have, but like the thing about wine, and tell me if the same is true of beer, because I haven't experienced this as much, but the fact that wine goes like peanut butter and jelly, like wine and food.
Yeah.
Like they really are meant to,
cheese in particular. Yeah. But a lot of food. Yeah.
To go together. It's a mealtime beverage. Beer, especially when you get into craft beer, is it similar? Like, do you do pairings and stuff?
Sure.
You do?
Yeah.
That's happening.
Oh, yeah. There is a Michelin-starred brew pub in Chicago called Band of Bohemia that develops beer for each course of meals they serve.
Wow.
They specifically brew beer to match the food they're serving.
So you can match just about anything.
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, some beer, it's actually kind of tricky to match food with IPAs. I mean, there are some varieties of beer that are probably better alone. I mean, you can. I don't want to say you can't. I mean, but there are some varieties of beer that are more versatile than others, or have flavor affinities that, they're more appealing or more common. Yeah, but I haven't experienced it a ton other than places like, Band of Bohemia in public. I mean, it does happen, but more so in people's homes if someone cares enough to say oh, I'm making Indian food. What kind of beer goes with that? You can just Google search it and find some great advice on it. That's another thing that, compared to the world we grew up in, Brad, like all of this information is so quickly and readily available. Like the idea of being an expert or having expertise is almost irrelevant. You can
Google it.
Yeah, right. You can know what you need to know in an evening if you want to do a wine food pairing or a beer food pairing.
Do you have a shorthand for varietals, like an app or a chart that you carry in your wallet where it's like, oh, this was a good year for X because
yeah,
the weather...
I got one in my car actually. I don't remember a lot of it off the top of my head because I just look at it. If I'm going to spend a lot of money on wine, for example, like if I'm going to buy a Sassicaia, let's say, if I'm going to buy like a Sassicaia Futures, like this is really getting nerdy. I just want to know what I'm getting into in terms of the vintage, And in my opinion, these days, there's not really going to be a bad bottle of wine like there used to be in the 70s or 60s, where like vintages would come out of France where just like, this is undrinkable. Like, we're not even going to, like, this is atrocious.
Right.
Like, it doesn't really happen. Like, the 2014 was a bad year for Sassicaia, as Sassicaia goes. It just might mean you lay it down longer, or you develop an appreciation for how it's different from the 2016. You think about it in a context as opposed to some kind of macro level assessment. Yeah, and like I said, like viticulture is so sophisticated now. Like any operation with half a brain is not going to make a bad vintage. Like when I talk about vintages being better than others, I mean and even that's somewhat subjective. Like, oh, like this part of Italy got more rain that year, or it got hotter sooner, or the nights weren't as cold. I mean, those things all affect the wine, definitely. But they know enough about how to manage this vineyard that they're not going to put out a shitty bottle. Right. Yeah. And it really is in the eye of the beholder. Yeah. And do you have a really sophisticated palate? Do you have a good palate? I love to test myself. There's this fun little wine bar in Pasadena where like they put out like 8 wines, and if you guess them all right, you get them free. And I've never guessed them all right. Like I have a feeling like, oh no, this is going to take a lot more work. I have to think about drinking wine in that way. Have you seen the documentary Somme? Of course, yeah. It's that's great. Crazy. It's nuts. And another thing that's nuts about it is these people work so hard at this. They sacrifice their lives, relationships. We're talking about the sommelier, master sommelier training. Other opportunities. And at the end, like, they study for this test, they fail it, they try again, they fail it, they try again, they get it. And after all this work, they get a job for, like a multinational beverage company. Like, I mean, I thought, what? Or, I don't know. I mean, one of the things that didn't occur to me going into watching that documentary was our, sommelier exams, and also, I supposed to appoint Cicerone exams, which is for beer. Are they like the MFAs of beverage culture? They are. Because I would have thought, okay, you study for 5 years, whatever. You get your somm. You're a master sommelier. You want to work at French Laundry or something. You want to work at Providence. Those jobs are taken. I don't know what sort of saturation rate there is. Like vis-a-vis high-end restaurants, and master sommeliers, or if master sommeliers, want, consider themselves individually as mobile as like MFA grads would, like, but it's like trying to get the cushy like academic job after you get your MFA. Right. It's hard to get. You get that MFA, and then it's like, whoa. And also, you're somebody like it's like being a writer. You've got your MFA. You're a writer for life. You didn't necessarily need a piece of paper to tell you that, but you are. Like for the next 60 years, like you're going to write or try to write. Right. The same with being a sommelier. You're 25. You're a master somm. Let's say you're 30 years old. You can do this until you're 80 or 90, right? And so you get this job. You get some sort of dream job. You fall in with, someone who is developing, healthy and interesting, cutting edge restaurant concepts and in a city that you want to live in. If you fall in with a person like that, they take you from place to place. Why would you, like you've taken a job away from infinitely, an infinite mass of other people who are going to come after you with these certifications,
Well, and you can also be the coolest guy at the party.
Yeah.
You can sit there and just
intimidate the hell out of people.
Right.
Someone brings this bottle of wine to a party, like, oh, I want you to meet Tina. She's a master sommelier. And you'd be like, oh, I'm going to put my bottle back in the car.
I'm just going to take this Chuck Shaw and...
I don't want her to see it.
Oh, man. Well, it's fascinating. And I guess, like, a question that I have for you relative to the subject matter of your two novels is, did you make a business level consideration about the fact that there is this huge market? Obviously, food is hugely popular, food television, food media. Mm-hmm. Did you look at that and say, wow, like Anthony Bourdain has this huge market, and is it Ruth Reichel, or I might be mispronouncing her name, but right, there's food writers, like it's a big thing. And did you say, there's an opportunity here to take that market and to write stories like literary fiction within that world as a way of being able to reach a lot of readers? Was that any part of your brain?
It was more the inverse of that. Like, I didn't see a lot of robust food fiction. I mean, there's some. But I, like a lot of writers, I just wrote the book I wanted to exist. Like, I'd read Anthony Bourdain. I'd read books set in the world of food and wine, nonfiction books, memoirs, and I thought, well, this is great. I'd love to write about this in the realm of fiction. I felt really motivated to do that. I remember reading this piece in the New Yorker on a pop-up supper club chef here in L.A. I forget what year it was, 2013, 2012. And I thought, this is great. This is exactly the kind of thing I want to learn more about and write fiction about. And it came out of that motivation. It didn't come out of like thinking like, oh, this is going to sell. Because like I said, I didn't think I was going to sell. I just wanted to write about something I wanted to learn about.
Right.
And I did the same thing with beer. I created characters that didn't know anything about beer. That like one of them loves it. Another of them hates it. They both end up making beer. And they end up getting to that point in their lives through very different ways. And what's fun about that is I get to have my characters be cosmonauts of inquiry. They can go in and they can ask the dumb questions, and they can tell the reader what I think is as much beer information as they should handle within the realm of a narrative. I didn't want to write Moby Dick. I didn't want alternating chapters with like lists of IPAs, like how to pour a beer, instructional interstitials. That book might come to exist, and I bet I would love it. But I didn't want that to be the story of Lager Queen. I wanted Lager Queen to be the story of women who find an identity in the beer industry and learn about it. And I wanted to talk the reader through the process of their experience learning about it. So,
but you're also telling family stories.
Yeah,
that's telling human
ultimately
stories.
The spine is that I want to write books that have a lot of humanity. Another thing that was on my mind when I sat down to write Kitchens, and certainly when I wrote Lager Queen, was I just wanted books. I wanted to read more books that had a little bit of optimism in them. That had a little bit more heart, and even if it's kind of cheesy or sentimental, or a lot of readers, a lot of like sophisticated coastal readers might kind of turn up their nose at, I certainly had one editor at a prominent coastal literary magazine roll their eyes during one of my readings, but I felt like I want to read like a more hopeful, like humane book in these times, and I was seeing so much like apocalyptic and post-apocalyptic literature, and that's great. I mean, like, obviously we know where that comes from, and we sometimes when we experience national trauma, you want to process it like that, and other times you just want to forget about it and think about something nice.
Right. Let's just make some beer.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of what I set out to do. I was like, I just want to, when I sit down after like experiencing the news cycle, I don't want to read about the news cycle always,
right.
I mean, sometimes. I mean, there's some great books, out there right now set within our time and, expand upon the realms of the themes of our time. But I also wanted to write a book that, could be an escape from that, and hopefully not in a a totally breezy way. I mean, the book takes on a lot of themes as it relates to class and poverty. I mean, there are parts of the book that were really tough for me to write, and the characters certainly go through the ringer. Like, it's not a cushy book, but compared to a lot of contemporary literature, I think it's optimistic. Like, I found myself describing it to someone yesterday as utopian. I felt like, he asked me, why did you write a book about like women in brewing? And I said, well, I want it to exist. I want more women in brewing. Like, I went to all these breweries. I didn't meet a lot of women. I met some, but mostly men. And I thought, that's really boring. I don't want to tell that story. So there's a lot of reasons I like to write about women, but
I was going to say, because that's another thing. Like, women read more books than men.
Yeah, that's true.
They're a bigger audience. So I'm just trying to deconstruct like the success of your fiction in terms of finding readers. It has a lot going for it, and it seems to be just like really mostly like a happy coincidence, like that.
Well, I write for my mom. I mean, that's my reader. When I think about, do I have a reader? It's my mom, and she'll never read one of my books. She's been dead for almost 15 years, but I initially started writing, and I still write to kind of evoke her and keep her present in my life, and to write her into my characters to kind of communicate with her.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, and connect with her, and to keep her, in my heart. And so, as it turned out, most of the readers for Kitchens, a lot of them, I'd say the majority, were my mom's demographic. And I thought, this is kind of amazing, because I set out to kind of evoke and resuscitate like memories and a connection with my mom. And then basically my mom comes to my readings.
Right.
Like, that's who comes to my readings. Right. It's like, that's who read Kitchens, was like my mom's friends, and I just thought, this is amazing.
This is like beautifully executed plan.
Yeah, it's like a utopian Twilight Zone episode. Yeah, it's like, oh my God, I miss my mom so much. I really want her in my life. I feel just like it's like a hole in my heart that will never be fixed, that she never lived to see any of this. She'd wanted to be a writer herself. She'd wanted to be a novelist. She died before she could do any of that. I feel like I'm honoring her legacy, like I'm trying to do the work she didn't do. And then I do this work, I bring it out in public, and like, oh wow, these people could be my mom's friends. I could go to a library reading or a bookstore in Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm among family. Like,
that's awesome.
It's wild.
That's crazy.
But that's how these impulses and disciplines merge to create this particular realm of.
But it's like. What strikes me is that it's a very pure motivation, and it's also a very strong one. Like, it comes from a very deep and powerful emotional place.
Well, it's certainly not provisional. Like, I don't feel like I'm into, like Chris Cooper's character in Adaptation, like fuck fish or whatever, I didn't move. I don't feel like I'm moving from topic to topic because I'm through with a certain topic, or I have obsessions that I need to slake. It's more like, oh, what are other realms of access to understanding my mom and her family and her place in my family and her place in my life and keeping her alive? What are other inroads to that? And it's so funny talking about food and drink and relationship with my mom, because she was a real, what's the word? Voluptuary.
What does that mean?
Oh, she really enjoyed eating and drinking.
Yeah.
Yeah, she not a gourmand exactly. Like, she didn't have picky tastes. She enjoyed fine dining, but she just enjoyed all dining. Yeah, she loved it all.
Yeah.
Yeah, eating, drinking, beer, wine, margaritas, cocktails. Everything. Fried food, vegetarian food, pizza, you name it. Like, she was into it.
Yeah. That's great, though. I like people like that. Sometimes I wish I was more like that.
I know.
It's like easygoing.
Yeah.
Loves life.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there going, well, wait a minute.
Yeah.
How many sugars are in this? And
exactly.
all that fucking bullshit.
Exactly.
I'm too susceptible. I need to get less neurotic.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then again, I also feel like, because I grew up in that milieu. Like, I remember having so many dinners where it was like a hot dog cut up and a bowl of macaroni and cheese.
Oh, sure.
Whatever it was.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And like Kool-Aid and, all the things that you grew up in the Midwest eating.
Yeah.
And there is something to be said about, like being more mindful of like what we're putting in our bodies, because like there are health repercussions. Like you can't eat yourself into bad health.
We were not mindful about what we put in our bodies growing up in Minnesota.
No, it was like drinking Mountain Dew, like 6 Mountain Dews in a day.
Yeah.
Like it was water.
I would come home from school. I would eat an entire frozen pizza.
Yeah, Tombstone.
And then I would have dinner with my family a few hours later. Right. Which was often like not that far away from the frozen pizza. It would like be like spaghetti and meatballs.
Yeah.
Be like chicken stir fry. Just really basic staple kind of stuff.
Yep.
Pork chops.
Yep.
We used to eat this fish, orange roughy. It's been overfished. It's pretty much gone now. Like you'll never see it. Like it was just overfished. But we had a lot of orange roughy. So
did we. Yeah. That's so funny. I remember, like my parents presented it as if it were like some sort of like unique delicacy, like with the orange roughy. We got the orange roughy.
Yeah. That was our Friday fish. Often was orange roughy.
Yeah, with Friday fish, all that stuff, and like I have such fond memories of it. And I go back up there because my wife is from Minnesota, and one of the things I notice. And again, this is tied to my like food neuroses or like my overly mindful approach maybe to food, is that they're almost in the Midwest. And this is the same in Indiana, in Illinois, like any place really in the Midwest. It almost seems like there is a cultural ingrained aversion to healthy food. Like not across the board, but like I sense more of it. It's like, fuck that. Like we're just going to eat beer battered wings and fries, and that's the good shit. And like who cares about like artichokes, or I don't know, like they're like, it almost feel I sometimes like say this to my wife, I'm like, it almost feels like people are like angry at healthy food. Like but it's a quiet anger.
Sure.
Is that am I imagining things?
No, I don't think so. Yeah, I think it's in the Midwest, it's easy to find people who cast aspersions on healthy food for one reason or another.
It's like pretentious to eat healthy. Work. It's like pretentious to eat healthy. It's like, oh, you eat salad?
That even if it's cheaper, like even if like, hey, I'll take you to the produce section. Like, look how affordable this is. This isn't more expensive,
Orange Roughy's twice as expensive.
Exactly. Yeah, it's just that it feels like work, I think.
Is that what it is? Okay.
It doesn't have the pleasure of unhealthy food.
Right.
And if something doesn't have pleasure, then it must be work.
And it also has less cultural, like it's less it's less tied to cultural identity. Like,
which is a shame, because so many of the people I grew up in the Midwest are descended from farmers who would grow these vegetables and, sustain their families on them. And it's funny, as you get older, you look at that and you feel more, as you just said, more divorced from that past and that connection with the land, and also the quality of vegetable you get when you're connected to the land. I mean, boy, the grocery stores in Minnesota in the 1980s were pretty dire. Like they wouldn't turn anyone on to tomatoes, like let alone like, I don't know if I saw an avocado until I, either went to the cities or moved to California. I can't remember, but like tomatoes, bananas, it's like, even apples like are quite often like the blandest version of those fruits. And now, thankfully, there's enough of an interest in eating local that you can get a tomato that tastes great in Minnesota pretty easily. And people care about it. Like more people care about it. Like day-to-day people care about it. Not just foodies, not just chefs, and that's one of the things I've really liked about the proliferation of food-related books and programming, is that it's convinced a lot of people that they know something about food and they can be chefs. And if that leads them towards better, healthier local ingredients, I'm all for it.
Well, and also just exposure to, this is what Bourdain did such a great job of, is just exposure.
Yeah.
Like, oh, wow, like there's this cultural tradition and this kind of food.
Yeah.
And we should try this. Wouldn't this be delicious?
Yes.
And maybe we'll drive out of our neighborhood and go to this like funky Thai restaurant across town or whatever it is to give it a shot because we saw it on TV or we read about it in a magazine.
My dad's one of the healthiest eaters I know, and he's really gotten into Vietnamese food. There's this Vietnamese restaurant like in St. Cloud that he always goes to. It's the same kind of thing. Like if you would have told me 20 years ago that this would be the case, you could have knocked me down with a feather.
It's changed a ton.
Yeah.
It's changed a ton. It's changed a ton. And for the better. And I think it's great that people are thinking more about what they eat.
Yeah. My dad used to matter-of-factly come home, like on days he had to cook, with bags of Taco Bell and give us all a 7-layer burrito. And now I don't think now I'm not even sure if he knows where the Taco Bell is in St. Cloud.
Yeah.
Like it hasn't been a part of his life in a while, and it's so cool to see that evolution.
When's the last time you ate fast food?
Yesterday.
Okay.
Yeah, after I came home from interview, I decided to try the Beyond Tacos at Del Taco. Because a friend of mine just went there 2 days ago and said, oh, yeah, they have Beyond Meat at Del Taco. And I was like, what?
Oh, wait, do they?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
That's why I said, I'll try that.
How was it?
Well, it's fine.
Okay.
It's got to be better than whatever they're...
Putting in the real ones?
Yeah, it's got to be. I know it's beet-based, and I like beets, too. So, I mean, like, it's not soy-based, too, which I like. It's vegetable-based, Beyond Meat. So, it was fine.
Didn't they just have a big public offering, Beyond Meat? I think that company just went public.
Oh, really?
And,
wow.
It blew up.
Yeah. So just yesterday, I had to try the Beyond Meat at Del Taco.
Wow, I'm glad I asked that question.
It had been a while. Yeah, I often don't. I don't even perceive it most of the time. I'm on my way somewhere else. But I was like, but there are also points, LA kind of closes early. I was out with my brother the last time he was in town. It was a Wednesday. We were coming back from Venice Beach, and there were like no restaurants open. He was like, where do you eat at 2 a.m?
Right.
And like, well, let's go to Del Taco. And that was the last time I'd been there, was the same Del Taco, and just got whatever, just because you're not tired, you're a little tipsy, you're just trying to, keep the evening going too with your brother, and so, get an Uber and schlep over to Del Taco.
Oh, so you didn't drive?
No.
How responsible of you.
Oh, thanks.
Ubering to Del Taco at 2 a.m.
Yeah. Yeah, no, there are people out. Yeah.
LA needs to get its act together a little bit on the late night. I mean, listen, at my age or whatever, I'm very rarely out past like 11. But, there is a part of me that's like, we should at least have some options for people who like to blow it out and be out late.
Yeah. It's Chicago, New York, we're much better for it. And, I don't think that... I don't understand the reasons behind it.
I think it's because people have to drive.
Yeah, it's a driving city. That's the problem.
They don't want people on it, but I feel like,
and it makes perfect sense.
On an average Friday or Saturday night, I often have wondered, like, what percentage of the cars on the road are over the legal limit at this point?
I know, that's what scares me.
It's scary, you know, and I feel like it's probably
especially on holidays. I hate driving on a drinking holiday like St. Patrick's Day or New Year's Eve or something like that. I feel like, oh my God, I'm taking my life in my hands going out here in LA.
Right.
I just want to stay home.
How long have you been here?
20 years.
Okay.
Well, 21 years. 21 years, July 4th.
So you moved here in what?
98.
98. Okay.
July 4th,
I was here 2001.
Yeah.
So right around
we've
the same
seen
time.
a lot of changes.
We have seen a lot of changes.
Yeah.
The homeless problem has gotten, I think, out of hand.
Yeah, it's pretty bad here.
It's real. I mean,
well, the affordable housing problem is really bad here too, and that's part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd like to see more mixed zoning. I mean, the neighborhood I live in Los Feliz is a great example of how it can work so well. I mean, I live in an apartment building on the same street with single-family homes and other apartment buildings, and I love it. I know Minneapolis just instituted it, first major city, to kind of do away with single, family zoning.
Well, that's the problem. There was a great op-ed in the New York Times about this, where it was like, liberals, especially in coastal cities where there's huge population centers and lots of homelessness, and big, probably like San Francisco, Los Angeles, New York, whatever, Chicago, I guess, too, would be one. But, they have a lot of, tendency to talk the right things or talk the right ways about how we need to improve homelessness and we need to get people off the streets and income inequality and all all those issues. But then when it comes, like when push comes to shove, and it's like, and by the way, we're going to rezone your neighborhood. And instead of just single family homes, there's going to be some there's going to be some quads and some apartment buildings. And all of a sudden people go, well, not my neighborhood.
Right. Exactly.
And then they're suddenly like, storming city council meetings and, donating to politicians and lobbying to prevent these things. So, it becomes a little bit hypocritical. And at some point, you're going to, in Los Angeles, just as an example, you're going to have to go up.
Yeah.
Like sort of in the movie Her, there's a lot more high rises.
Yeah.
Which I think is
that's true.
A pretty astute future. I mean, because like there's no more real estate to build outward in, so you're going to have to build straight up, which means downtown is going to become, I think, a lot more populated with residents as opposed to just businesses, and then you're going to have to rezone, or people are just going to have to flee. I don't know. It just seems like that something's got to happen.
If if you and your wife could both work from home, would you still live here?
I don't know. Mm-hmm. I kind of love it, but I'm also like sort of hungry for like a slower pace and some nature. Mm-hmm. I love living near mountains. I've lived near mountains since I was like 17, 18 years old.
Wow, that's cool.
I've always had a mountain to climb. I know this sounds strange, but like I've always had like within striking distance of my home, a mountain to climb.
I forget, where'd you go to college?
Boulder.
Oh, wow.
So like I've been doing that multiple days a week my entire adult life, and I feel like I would freak out if I didn't have a mountain.
Yeah.
How many cities or places in the world or in the country can you live in where you have like easy access to a mountain?
Not a lot.
And I also
think there would be more, but there aren't really.
No, even Denver is, it's off in the
it's in a bowl, yeah.
Yeah, on the plains, on the Platte River or whatever.
Yeah.
But so Santa Barbara. I'd go through this in my head, or you move to like Ojai or something, because I love the good weather too.
Yeah,
I don't need the winter. I did the winter.
Yeah.
I'm fine without winter. I don't need
winter is a choice.
Yeah, winter is a choice. Yeah. Fall, I love. Fall, I do miss.
Yeah,
I miss the changing of the leaves in the Midwest. Like that season is awesome. Like October in the Midwest is glorious.
Yeah, Minnesota and Illinois, two places I've lived, they just own fall.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah. But in life you have to make sacrifices. Like I'll take 75 and sunny in February and have to like just look at the pretty fall leaves on Instagram or whatever,
Yeah, I'd like to visit in the fall. That's when I make a point of trying to be in the Midwest. And luckily I will be for Lager Queen. I'll be touring until the first week of November. So I'll be
from now until the first week of November.
Yeah.
Damn. Are they, and like, so is your publisher sending you out?
Yeah. They're sending me out for part of it. Then the rest is self-financed. The rest is stuff I organized with their help. With their logistical help and support, but I'm paying on that leg starting in like mid-late August. I'm paying for my own flights and hotels and stuff.
How many events do you have? Like how many?
41, I think, right now.
Jesus.
This year.
All over and all in the United States?
All in the U.S. this time, yeah. I don't have any overseas yet.
And so you go to bookstores mostly? Or
mostly. Some libraries. Libraries are great, too, because you can connect with readers and communities that don't have bookstores. And also, quite often, libraries pay. And they'll pay you enough that it'll offset the price of the flight or the rental car or the hotels or all. And also, like, I've had libraries in the past also provide the hotel room, like pay for the hotel.
Oh, wow.
They'll put me up, and yeah, I mean, libraries have budgets for these things. And I didn't know about that. I didn't, when I visited a book tour when I was, still working in kitchens, I thought, I'm going to go to a bunch of places. I'm going to go to Skylight. I'm going to go to Powell's. I'm going to go to Tattered Cover. And no, it's like, yeah, sure, I did a little bit of that, but I also really, really have enjoyed the libraries because they publicize well. They know their communities. They have book clubs that meet at the library. They marshal them. Like they do such a great job of community understanding and outreach. There really are such understated public resources. And like I said, they've got a budget for these things. I mean, I've had some libraries, like the library I went to in Fishers, Indiana, paid me, I forget how much, but it was in the thousands of dollars to go there.
No
and it's
kidding.
Yeah. Some of them it's hundreds, some of it's like 300, 500 here. Then other times it's like $5,000, $3,000. It's like these things start to snowball and like, oh yeah, now I've just paid for my book tour.
Right. Right.
Yeah, and you just have to reach out to them and let them know, like they exist and you're willing to go.
Yeah.
Because often these libraries, they're not in places that you've been. They're in suburbs. They're in small towns in the prairie. They're in mid-sized cities that don't have that sexy bookstore, But they have readers. They have readers that are going to love your book if they know about it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I feel like in the Midwest, like Midwestern libraries, especially for kitchens, but also for Lager Queen.
Also with this book tour, one of the fun things that technology has enabled us to do easier is off-site book sales. So a lot of the bookstores I'm visiting, I'm not going to be in the bookstore. I'm going to be at a brewery. I
was going to say, you're going to do, because it makes sense to do food and beverage-related events.
Yeah, and I think the bookstore loves it too. It's a different look. They have a reason for the venue change. This isn't, it's inspired by the content. And
And the people who are attending have more fun. Let's be honest.
I think so.
I mean, nothing against bookstores.
Yeah.
But how can you beat like going to a brewery and having like a good beer while and then
afterwards, so much fun.
Afterwards, you get to hang out and talk and eat and drink, and that's great. Everybody has a good time.
Yeah, that'll be a lot of fun.
And you sell books.
Yeah. I mean, they'll just have to schlep over the boxes and bring a square reader and sit down at a table and
get people drunk and take their money.
It seems yeah, so I'm very lucky that, to live in a time where there's enough breweries and bookstores for this kind of thing to happen and for the technology to supply that relationship and make it robust. I feel very fortunate to, be a touring author at this moment in time, writing about these things.
So what about, you have a new book that you just sold?
Yeah.
Let's talk about that, and then I got to let you go. But you've got a third novel that you've sold to Pamela Dorman, so you're staying with the same publisher.
Yes, I'm very happy about that.
And it was partial as well?
It was 150 pages this time, about that. Well, like 120. I'm at 150 now. I've written 30 pages since then. And
like, without getting too deep into the weeds, like the negotiation details or whatever, like you have a third book, you're going back to your publisher, you've had some success, so you probably have options, but you decided to stick with Pamela Dorman.
Oh, very much, yeah.
Can you talk about like the business decision-making process around that? Like this sense of loyalty, like loyalty is one thing, but you also have to look out for your best interest as a business person or, to some degree. Like how do you weigh those things?
I'm going to go back to what we talked about earlier, follow the enthusiasm. I know it's here. I know it's here at Viking and with Pamela Dorman. Like these people have supported my first two books with, such unexpected alacrity. I know, and we know each other. And I do them a solid by doing so much touring. I feel like we each give each other something, like we have a relationship. And they know I will do my best to promote my books. And I know they will do an excellent job of promoting my books both within their company and through their sales reps to bookstores and libraries. And I feel like I know this. This is like, this ecosystem is such a blessing. I mean, I'm not saying I couldn't experience this at a different publisher or with a different editor, but why would I want to find out? I feel like, I don't know. I mean, that's where I'm at right now. Even when my agent mentioned that, you could probably get more for this book at a different place, I thought, well, what is that going to cost me? I can't put a price tag on what Viking's done, and things like Tidal Wave. I can't put a price tag on that. I feel like, it's probably really ill-advised of me to be saying this in a national forum where anyone can access in terms of like my future leverage and negotiations, but I really love these people, and I feel a lot of faith and support from them. And as long as that is the case, as long as I feel like, oh wow, they're behind me, they want to develop me as a writer, I'm like, why would I go elsewhere? One of the things I heard from my editor when I was working on the third book, when I showed her the pages, was she was like, well, I see you're, writing another book set in the Midwest, set like it's set at a restaurant, set at a supper club. And she was like, we just want to make sure you're evolving as a writer. People ask me sometimes, does your editor or does your publisher like force you to write about food and drink because of your first book? And I'm like, no, actually, I think they kind of like me to write about something else, or at the very least, they want me to demonstrate an evolution. They want to feel like he's growing as a writer.
When are you going to write the great coastal vegan novel?
Yeah, I know, and it's not just subject matter either. That's facile. They want to see my writing skill develop as well. Regardless of the realm in which it's effectuated. I feel like that's a great scenario to be in. Like they care what I'm writing about. Of course, they feel confident in my work about food and drink, but I think they also will not only be open to me writing about other things, but encouraging of it.
Well, that's all you can ask for.
Yeah. So I feel pretty lucky to be in this situation, and we'll see what happens. It is a fickle industry, and there's been a lot of crazy stuff happening with Lager Queen this week, and I feel like
Like what?
Oh, I don't know. I just was interviewed by All Things Considered yesterday.
Oh, that's great. I just talked to my agent, Erin Hosier, on this show for her memoir, and she said one of the few things that really does move copies is national NPR.
Yeah.
So that's good.
Yeah. Yeah, I was so nervous. I sweated.
More nervous than you are right now?
Sweated caverns. I'm afraid so, Brad.
By the way...
I mean, you put the heat on, man.
Jay Ryan is shirtless right now. He's slowly shedding layers, and he is...
Yeah. My one-pack abs. It's like a pony keg.
Which is apropos, considering your new novel.
I know. My doctor told me to cut out the beer. He was like, try to drink less beer. Just try. Yeah, you're as heavy as you've ever been. I was like, it's all the beer I've been drinking. And he was like, are you going to be able to cut down on the beer the rest of the year? And I'm like, no, I'm afraid not.
No.
I'm going to be touring breweries.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, that was the big one. I mean, but really nice New York Times review, Oprah magazine, like a 3/4 page feature in Entertainment Weekly that had an illustration of me, like all this nutty stuff. And the more starred reviews than Kitchen's, better reviews, like it's the people really seem to be responding to this book, and it's nerve-wracking, But at the same time, I feel like this may not happen again. It may not happen again like this, Maybe part of it is like the fact that like growing up like middle class and for a while, lower middle class and in the Midwest, and you feel like survival is provisional. You feel like, oh, I got a paycheck now, but we don't know about next week.
You don't know.
Like you could get fired or laid off at any point.
That's the truth, though.
That's the family I grew up in. My dad would get laid off from time to time, and would just be like, well, that's it. I guess like we're having fewer Christmas presents, or we're not going to eat out, or we're going to cut this thing, or we're going to sell this car. Like all this stuff would happen. And I've never, how can anyone ever really forget that? And so I view any success I have as completely provisional and very temporary and fleeting.
Right.
It's like this happened, but I always have to keep hustling. I always have to keep working. I can't ever let my foot off the gas because like everything could change about this at any minute. Well,
I think you're doing well. And I hope you have a great time on this tour. Enjoy the moment.
I'll do my best.
I'm sure. I think you're doing that too. So,
thanks.
I'm really thrilled for you. Congratulations again, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you so much, Brad.
All right, everybody. That's J. Ryan Stradal. What a good talk, huh? Good guy and a great writer. He's a good guy, but he's a great writer. He's a mediocre human being, but a fabulous prose stylist. He's actually best of both worlds. And the new book is called The Lager Queen of Minnesota. It is a novel. It is available from Pam Dorman Books. Go get it. You can find J. Ryan Stradal online at jryanstradal.com. You can find him on Twitter. His handle is at jryanstradal. The Lager Queen of Minnesota, out there now. Go get it. Go get it. If you want to support the show, patreon.com/otherpplpod. If you want to write to me, letters@otherppl.com. Thanks to Kill Rock Stars and the band Stereo Total for the theme song music. As always, thank you to Tiger in My Tank for the interstitial music. Don't forget about the Other People app. This show has its own app. It's free. It's a totally free app. It's the Other People with Brad Listi app. Go get that app wherever you get your apps. What else can I tell you? I'll say this. Leonardo DiCaprio is a fantastic actor. Say what you will. I think he's a really good actor. I gotta admit. Okay, I don't know who's on next week. I'm still figuring it out. It's in flux.